Jerry Reynolds, and of course, Ryan and Sacktown will join us as well. It is an off day for the Kings. They've got the Knicks coming up tomorrow, and the question is, will Jalen Brunson be on the floor for New York or not? We'll talk about that and a lot more coming up in a moment. Yes, indeed. And holy moly, Jim Bob Bowley, Jerry Reynolds. It's Wednesday. Jerry, how are you, buddy?
Couldn't be better. Couldn't be better. Just looking forward to some Kings basketball. Getting a dry day. Wonderful here in Northern California.
Raise your hand if you had the Kings as the number 2 seed in the West come March. I'm looking around the room, Jerry. I don't see anybody with their hands up.
Well,
that's why you play. That's why you play the games.
You know that. They'd be lying if they hold it up.
Hey, Jerry, that's why you play the games, my man. That's why you have the schedule. That's why you go out and play them.
Oh, sure. And, the Kings, certainly the schedule's going to toughen up for the Kings here going forward. But, they've kind of answered every challenge, and you got a reason to believe that they'll come through this okay.
Yep, absolutely. Tomorrow it's the Knicks. Let's back up since the All-Star break. I mean, listen, I've been talking about this with Ryan, okay? The reality is, you can't control what the other team does. You can't control if Damian Lillard's not going to play or Jeremy Grant for rest. Injuries are part of the game. We get all of that. The Kings have had their fair share of breaks, but you have to take advantage of them. I really like the way the Kings are playing right now. I think they're playing very consistently right now, regardless of who's on the floor or who's not for the other team.
Yeah, they've gotten great performances from guys off the bench, whether it's Malik Monk, Trey Lyles has been extremely productive in limited minutes. Kevin Huerter struggled for a while. Then you got, of course, Malik Monk, Terrence Davis more than makes up for it, or Davion Mitchell. Now Kevin is back playing at a high level. It just seems like they've got all the pieces they need, and Coach Brown has a real knack for pulling the right strings, which is not easy. So an awful lot of reasons to be positive. That's what I think.
Boy, tomorrow night is going to be one hell of a game. National televised game, all right? So it's on the big stage. The Knicks had their 9-game winning streak snapped last night by Charlotte. We don't know about Brunson yet, but now you've got, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, in all the years that you and I did games, or you were coaching, or you were in the front office, I don't ever recall Sacramento playing New York where both teams were really rolling and really good.
No, I'm sure it didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And it's got, so that makes it really special. Obviously the Knicks, I wanted them to be on a 10-game winning streak coming in personally. But because getting beat by Charlotte, they could be some angry Knicks. And that's what you don't want. They're an awfully good team. I've watched them a good bit. Yeah. And they could very well end up fourth. I think they could catch the Cavs. Yep. But at any rate, they're a solid fifth for sure in the East.
They really are. And, it was not that long ago, there were rumblings out of New York that it was time to get rid of Tom Thibodeau already. They've really turned their team around. It's interesting when you look at what one player means to a team. Dallas is nowhere near as good without Brunson, and Brunson has really been huge for the Knicks, Jerry. That's we always talk about, you always talk about you don't get better by losing good players, okay? Dallas lost a good player. They didn't replace him because he was a free agent, and look what's happened.
Yeah, they didn't. As good as Kyrie Irving is, he doesn't really fit the team as well as Brunson did. Brunson obviously really did fit better with Luka, and he could take over when Luka's resting and really score. It's one of those deals. I think the Mavs really kind of blew it on that one because they should have known how valuable he was before it got to that, and they could have. It's a little bit like the Steve Nash situation years ago. Mark Cuban really doesn't make many mistakes when it comes to keeping players they need to keep. But I think Brunson was definitely a mistake. They got to the Western Finals last year with that team, and they're
That's
nowhere
right.
near that caliber right now.
Now, you talk about Nash. I believe it cost the Mavericks 2 championships. I really believe that Dallas would have won. They won one, but I believe they would have had several more if they had kept Nash. Mark Cuban did not want to give him that 6-year deal because he was worried about his back. And then he ended up going to Phoenix and didn't win a championship, but won back-to-back MVPs.
Yeah, I always remember Cuban told me once he was visiting after a game sometime. I can't remember. I think it was a home game, and he was saying, "Yeah," because I just mentioned, man, if you guys had kept Nash, I didn't want to get too particular, but he said, "Yeah," I said it's one of those things where I overpaid everybody except the guy I really should overpaid. That's about right.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to be honest. Jerry,
Yeah.
there are a lot of things going around the NBA. We start with Kendrick Perkins and his comments regarding the MVP. I was so happy to see someone finally stand up to him, and that was JJ Redick yesterday on ESPN. Really a sad commentary, and I talked about this very often on my podcast. I spend a lot of time talking about this on my daily shows. It's really sad that here we are in 2023 and everything still comes down to race, and we got to put people in groups, and it drives me crazy, but I was so happy to see someone finally stand up to Kendrick Perkins and tell it like it is. I don't know how you feel about this, but these comments have been driving me crazy.
Well, I thought it was really just out of line. I was glad to see J.J. Redick go after him. Certainly, Kendrick deserved it. I guess I'm one of those people. I don't understand how in the world, with all the talented analysts available to the ESPN, they would hire somebody like Perkins anyway. I think what he did was bordered on total racial bigotry, his statements. But I mean, really, you've got some really talented guys,
Yes.
like Greg Anthony or Channing Frye is terrific. Jim Jackson. I can just think of all kinds of guys who are just simply far more talented as analysts and knowledgeable basketball people than Kendrick Perkins. I mean, to me, I think Kendrick probably ought to be fired, and whoever hired him ought to be fired.
I don't think we need to add anything else to that. And then you get the Memphis situation. It's just been announced that Memphis is going to be without Morant. They're going to have him suspended for 4 more games. Memphis is sliding big time. Again, they lose to the Lakers last night. The Kings are now tied for second with Memphis. Jerry, and again, we talk about optics. We talk about we're not within the walls of the organization. And you know this better than I do. You know. A lot of times people are not aware of what's truly going on behind the scenes. All right. They think they do, but they don't. This is not a good situation going on in Memphis right now. And I don't care whether you are within the walls of the organization or not. There are some real issues there in Memphis.
Yeah, nobody's denying it there. A couple of things have come out where they felt the necessity to have a players only meeting. Stephen Adams kind of was the voice of reason about felt like too many guys were not acting professionally on the team, and really needed to get back on track. And I mean, you can make whatever you want of that, but to me, Ja's the leader of the pack, and I think things have been spiraling a little bit out of control the last year or so. I've always felt I don't know why the Grizzlies let Ja's father become such an attention focus as well, and that's not a positive. And he and Ja and Dylan Brooks both seem to find a way to insert themselves in situations they don't need to insert themselves.
And they also lost Brandon Clark in the last week, and no one's really talking about him. I mean, he was an important piece. He has an Achilles, so it's not just Morant. This team is nowhere near as good as they were a month ago before the Steven Adams injury, and obviously, he comes back for the stretch drive. But I just don't see Memphis being able to hold on here, Jerry. Yeah, they'll be in the playoffs, but I can see them being a one and done.
Yeah, I definitely they're going to be slipping. They're one of my team that I could see really maybe not being able to stay in the top 4. For sure, slip enough. I mean, getting Adams back is really going to help him, as you pointed out. I mean,
Yep.
He's a valuable guy. He's the one guy that can bounce Sabonis around like he's like Shaq used to do to Pollard. Just so big and strong. And But losing Brandon Clark, that's a big loss. That was a guy that came in games and made you better quite often.
The Phoenix Suns, Jerry, they're the team that I think everyone should be keeping their eye on.
They better. I mean, I've watched them now a couple games, and I mean they're really good. They're really good,
Yeah.
and Durant, for whatever someone wants to say about him, besides being a great talent, I mean he really is a type guy that will fit in and is fitting in. His game
Hmm.
just you just trot him out there, and he'll find a way to get 27 to 30 points, not really force anything, not affect. A Booker's game or Chris Paul's game, and I mean that's a true superstar there.
All right. Now, we always talk about getting attention. I'm still getting messages from fans. Gee, the Kings aren't getting the media attention they deserve. They're the number 2 team, blah, blah, blah. I don't necessarily agree with that. But if you really want attention, the way to do that, okay, is you got to beat up on the New Yorkers, okay? The last time these 2 teams met, the Knicks blew out the Kings at the Garden. Fox did not play in that game. But both these teams are significantly better today than they were back in that game. You want to open up the eyes of the national media, go out and kick the butt of the Knicks tomorrow on national TV, and everyone will start talking about the Kings. That's the way the league works. I'm sorry, but that's the truth.
Oh, it absolutely does, especially because it is the Knicks,
That's right.
and the Knicks are playing well. Knicks are a good team, so yeah,
Hmm.
you can't to me this team has every right to be frustrated with the lack of respect they've gotten through most of the year. But okay, you're getting it now, and now's the time to really prove it. I guess is what I would say, and the solidly getting a win against the Knicks would, I think, establish that in everybody's mind.
All right, you talk about matchups in this game. Randall just kills the Knicks. Now, he got ejected in the last game, scored points out, but the game was already decided by then pretty much. So, he is a nightmare for Sacramento. He's a nightmare matchup.
He is, yeah. I don't know what they're going to do with him. Be honest with you. I mean, last year he got 46, I think, in Golden
Hmm.
One, and if he can get on those tears, he's a much better shooter than people give him credit for. He's a power guy, but he's very comfortable shooting the 3 ball. I think they're going to have to throw different guys at him, and I liked what Coach Brown did a lot last year. Or last game, we've been talking about it a lot, but went to a little more zone.
Hmm.
We saw him use double teams against Kawhi Leonard, some guys like that, and I think they're coming around to realize they've got to kind of do some trickeration out there if to make up for just straight up man is not going to
Whoa,
do
whoa,
it.
whoa! Trickeration? Is that? Did I? I'm trickeration.
Well, that and some strategery, both need both of them.
Okay, trickeration and strategy. Is that correct? Did I get both of
That
those
is
right?
correct. That is correct.
Yeah,
You can use that because that's what we need here with the Kings. A
yeah.
little strategery, key spots, and some trickeration.
Before we get Ryan on in Sacktown, you lost somebody that was always so great to you with the Indiana Pacers, and I enjoyed being around David Benner every time that we were in Indiana. And you being from Indiana, he understood the significance of you coming back there every year. I was so sad to see of his passing. He's been fighting cancer for a couple of years, and there's just not enough superlatives to talk about when you mention David Benner's name.
Boy, there isn't. I mean, what a nice man. Obviously started off as a journalist for the Indianapolis Star covering basketball, and then of course the later years being the PR director and everything. And such, I mean, I always just look forward to him so much. And I didn't realize that he was struggling health wise that much. He kept it very private.
He
The
did.
last year when the Pacers came through Sacramento, uh, he called. We visited a while. He wouldn't know if I was going to the game. I said, "No, I'm going to stay home." He said, "Well, if I can't get a picture with you, I'll get a picture with your sign there at the door, the media door." And then he sent it to me, and it's like, but he was just such a wonderful, easygoing guy, and gosh, I just the courage he had to have to go through it. And like I say, most of us didn't realize that, that he didn't retire because he wanted to. He retired because he needed to.
Yeah. All right, Ryan in Sacktown joins us. How are you, buddy?
Doing great. How are you guys doing today?
We're
Great,
doing
Ryan.
great. It's hard to believe that we're sitting here talking about the Kings with the number 2 seed in the West, and it's been a while since we had a game of this magnitude in Sacramento in the month of March. National TV, both teams playing well. The big bad boys of Manhattan and New York, Broadway. This is going to be a fun game tomorrow night.
Oh, it's going to be a barn burner, and I expect the Kings to come out. They've been playing very consistent. I think they're going to rise to the occasion. They've been playing pretty well in big games, so I look forward to it a lot, and I know Sacramento is as well.
Last time they were on TNT, they beat the other team in New York, Brooklyn. They embarrassed them with their highest scoring output of the season, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know if that means anything, but I do know this. If they do that to the Knicks tomorrow, wow, we're going to be on our post-game show for about 8 hours, okay?
Yeah.
We'll go to the wee hours of the morning.
Yes, we will.
So,
yes, we will.
That's going to be awesome.
One thing about it, it's going to be pretty tough to get your usual 120 against the Knicks. There's, the baskets won't come quite as easy against the Knicks as they do against a lot of teams.
Well, if they do, Tom Thibodeau won't be on the floor by the end of the game because he'll be ejected. Can you imagine? Tibbs is a fiery guy. He actually has done a very good job there in I don't want to say an impossible situation, but when he got there, the Knicks were the number 4 seed. They lost to Atlanta in the first round. And then last year, the Knicks took a huge step back. They go out and do some shopping, and they bring Brunson in. And they were not playing very well in the first part of the season. But since then, Jerry, would it be an overstatement to say they've been playing as well as anybody in the league?
No, they're right there. When you can go into Boston and win, that tells you a lot right there.
Yeah.
But one thing, Coach Thibodeau has done everywhere he's been, whether it's been Chicago or Minnesota or now the Knicks, look at where the team was before he got there and look how much better they got after he got there. And as you pointed out earlier, Grant, some of the media talking about firing him. It's like, yeah, go ahead and fire him. See how that works, you damn fools.
Right.
The guy's a coach. And, I'm not saying his shelf life is as long as some coaches, but you better be sure if you're going to replace Tom Thibodeau, you got a heck of a coach lined up because he's hard to replace.
All right. Again, we didn't see De'Aaron Fox in the last game, and so I have not heard an update on his status for tomorrow. I know De'Aaron Fox will be playing, but I've not heard anything officially, so they'll have an update tomorrow.
Coach Brown said today
Ryan,
Coach Brown said he expects De'Aaron to play tomorrow.
And again, if he goes through shoot around and there are no issues, then that should be good. So that's important to have the Kings at full strength. You think tomorrow, assuming that it's a tight game and the Kings win, Ryan, I think that might be the craziest, loudest, the best atmosphere that we've ever seen at the Golden One Center. I think tomorrow could be that night.
Yeah, I think so, Grant. Look at that night against Brooklyn. It was wild then, and the Kings weren't even on the run that they are now. That kind of triggered this run, to be honest. And so I expect it to really be a pre-playoff atmosphere, and you get a little taste of what it's going to be like once we get to the dance.
We appreciate the Super Chat donation, Nerman. Thank you very much. Good stuff right there. Lifting some weights, keep it up. Yeah, good job. Keep up the exercise. All right, so we're talking about 18 games left. Jerry, are we crazy to be talking about the Kings potentially ending up as the 2nd seed in the West because of what's happening behind them with Phoenix? And the Kings and the Suns still have 2 games remaining. But I don't see the Kings, barring injury, barring losing Sabonis or Fox, I don't see them falling out of the top 4 right now. I think that there's really, it's unlikely that they're going to be anything lower than 4. What do you see on this?
That's my feeling. I really think they've got a great chance to stay 3rd. at the worst, because the Clippers just haven't put it together. I'm not saying they won't, but to date, it doesn't. They were one of the teams I thought might could pass the Kings. I still think the Suns can, but that'd be the only team, and the Grizzlies are going to fall. So, before this, I really kind of looked at the Kings hanging on to maybe fifth before some things that we've seen come to pass. Certainly like I say, the Clippers have not been a very good team.
No.
It could change. They've got some talent, but we know the Suns, they're going to move up, barring injury. Grizzlies are going to move down, barring a miracle. So why not? There's every reason to believe the Kings could be second or third. That's for sure.
What do you think, Ryan? You think second's realistic right now, or do you think we should be shooting more for just hang on to number 3?
Second, it's realistic, but I think 3 is where it's going to be at. The Kings got a tough schedule coming up. They see Phoenix a couple times. They have Boston. They have Milwaukee. So I think 3 is where they ultimately end up.
All right. Jerry, people would like your thoughts on Jim Boeheim after 47 years. He's done coaching at Syracuse. Did you know Jim? Do you know him?
No, I don't. I've watched him over the years, and always, amazing how he's won a national championship at Syracuse. It's not exactly the, garden spot of America to attract athletes, and maybe, as a coach, obviously been involved with Mike Krzyzewski on the Olympic teams, but he's always coached the best zone defense in the game for years. Really a terrific matchup zone that I always enjoyed watching, because everybody knew he was going to play it, and nobody had success playing against it very often. So, a great coach, and his sons are good players. They played for him. Of course, Jim was a good player. That's what's really sad for me, is I'm old enough to remember Jim Boeheim actually playing. He was a little younger than me, so when I got out of college, he was still playing in college, and very good player.
It's interesting you talked about a zone and how good it was. Why do you think it was so hard for other teams and other coaches to duplicate what he was teaching defensively?
The thing about zones, and I coached a matchup zone for years in college division, because when in the NBA, when I came in, you couldn't play a zone.
Correct.
And so that made it. I always said if you could play a zone even with inferior opposite or talent, you'd have a better chance. But the main reason, I think, is that every good matchup zone has its own set of rules, and most coaches aren't going to tell you what they are. In other words, how they match up. They'll tend to match up, say, if you match up with a point guard crossing, the other guard may immediately cover the high post. Well, another zone might do it differently. It might immediately cover a wing. And so it makes it a little tougher. And if you don't know the exact rules that they're playing by, and I always remember just being in college where we'd always get in a matchup, and in the first cutter, we went with them just to make teams think we're playing man, and then get back into the zone, and just so little stuff. And but other than that, I think some of the better coaches did learn to play against it better, but he had a lot of success because they did what they did and did it well every night.
Yeah, Jerry, let me add on to that.
Yeah.
Let me add on to that really quick as well. I think he recruited players to fit that zone offense or zone defense a lot of times as well. Don't get me wrong. Syracuse had some star players, Melo and such, but they've also had star players that were never great NBA players. Jerry McNamara, Boeheim's son. And I think that was part of the success as well.
Oh, I agree with that. I think, in fact, when you don't have great athleticism, and you can't really recruit the great athletes as a whole, as 4 or 5, like the North Carolinas or Kentuckys or Duke get, and you only have a couple of them, it's a little tougher to match up with those kind of teams as man to man. And so, you get the Jerry McNamara's or whatever, and you say, well, he wouldn't play at Kentucky, but yet he can play for me, and maybe we can beat Kentucky by playing different. And, I always remember just in my lifetime at various levels when I had really the great athletes, we didn't play much zone. When I didn't, we played a lot of zone. And because you got to find ways to win. And that's what I
Yep.
always was offended by the NBA when I came in the league, where they wouldn't let you do that. In fact, is they made you guard guys like Mark Eaton, who's weren't trying to score, but you had to put a man on them. It's like, why do we need to
Mhm.
guard them? It's ridiculous. Anyway,
Well,
so I'm getting on a rant here,
I,
but the league is smarter now. It gives coaches a little more opportunity to control their destiny.
well, here's the bottom line. When Jerry was coaching at Vincennes, Ryan, and everyone else that's watching on the stream, when he had Bob McAdoo and Footsy Walker, it really didn't matter what the hell you were doing. You just wanted to give the ball to one of those two guys, and you had a great chance of winning the game. Right, Jerry?
Make sure they were healthy and got their uniforms on and got to the game on time. That was key. We got to West Georgia, and we didn't have quite as much talent, but so we had to do a couple of different things to get the same things done. But you're right. At Vincennes, we could have beat Evansville or Indiana State at that time, and they were Division I.
Jerry, tell the story again. Jerry, share the story again for those that have not heard it about the timeout with you told Footsy Walker to Bob McAdoo. It's one of the funniest things I've heard.
Well, yeah, it was I think Foots was a freshman, Mac was a sophomore at Vincennes, and early in the season, and Mac was a guy that loved to shoot it. Has proven it's a great pro career and with Vincennes and then North Carolina. Anyway, Foots came over to me once as he's running up floor and he said, Coach, Mac, he's yelling for the ball all the time. And then then pretty soon I just called a timeout. And I called Foots over and I said, Foots, what's going on? He said, well, every time I come down the floor, Mac's calling for the ball. I said, well, Foots, now who's the point guard on this team? He said, well, I am. I said, well, then you don't throw in the ball if you don't want to. You're running this team. He said, oh, okay. I said, now, Foots, just remember, if the game gets close, throwing the ball. He said, and I remember Foots looked at me and said, oh, I think I get it now. And so that's strategy for you, Grant.
Hey, for those of you that are younger and don't even know who Bob McAdoo is, and thank you very much, Eddie. We greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much. But if you don't know who Bob McAdoo is, look him up, okay? Former MVP, was not a good player. He was a great player in the NBA. Not good, great. Just look up Bob McAdoo. He was great.
He was. I mean, truly one of the Rookie of the Year, MVP, 3-time leading scorer, led the league in rebounding as well. I mean, I don't know. That's one of the reasons he's one of the top 50 in the history of the game. And sadly, not enough people know about the history of the game.
That's right. Well, he was one of the best. And I remember when he played with Buffalo and Ernie D and that team, that was like must-see basketball. That was one hell of a team, Jerry. Bob McAdoo was like unbelievable.
Yeah, he was. I always remember when he was playing for Buffalo, he called me one night real early in the morning and woke me up and he said, Coach, he said, I want you to know I just busted your boy's butt tonight for 52. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, Cowens. He said, you're a big fan of Cowens. I said, yeah, I'm always a big fan of Dave Cowens because we'd watch games when he was still in junior college. And he said, well, I just want you to know I had 52. And if the guards would thrown it to me more, I might have went for 70. So he had a lot of confidence.
He would have scored 70 if they threw him the ball more. He could have scored as much as he wanted. I mean, he was Jerry. I hate to say this, but it's a cliche. Bob McAdoo was unstoppable. I mean, you couldn't guard the guy really.
He was Kevin Durant before Kevin Durant. In a different style, different time. He really was a 6'10" guy that didn't have the 3-point shot, but could have moved back there. But was quick off his feet. And he was. Like I say, there for those who really study the game. Forget the George Gervins and the McAdoos and some of those guys of the past, David Thompson, that were just unguardable guys.
Jerry, somebody wants you to go back in history. The big deal that you orchestrated the overall feeling with the Mitch Richmond Billy Owens trade. Take us back to that point in time and that trade leading up to it, and the criticism you received right after making it.
Well, it was one of those things where we had the third pick, and we're going to basically take Billy Owens, and come to find out that was the player that Don Nelson really wanted. He wanted to get a little more size, I guess, or whatever, and so we'd been talking a lot about different things. But I said, well, I'll trade you the pick or the rights to Billy Owens if we go ahead and take the pick, but I've got to have Mitch Richmond. And of course, he didn't want to do that right away, so it drug out a little bit. But finally, we did do that, and of course, it was one of those things to where my thinking was very simple. The Kings didn't have a star, and I thought, for sure. Well, Mitch had been Rookie of the Year his first year, and the second year averages 22 and a half on Run DMC. So I said, there's no risk for us. It's not the saying that Billy might have turned out to be a star. He didn't, but he could have. But it wouldn't have made any difference to me because I thought the franchise needed a surefire star. And of course, The Rock was every bit that. And of course, Billy was a good player. And but the criticism I got, a lot of the, especially Bay Area writers, which surprised me, how that, Nelly really took us to, took advantage of us, blah, blah, blah. And pretty much it went that way for a little while. I always remember Michael Jordan came to play the Warriors, and the same writers were asking Michael, said, what do you think, boy, the Kings got taken advantage of there on that trade? And he said, are you crazy? Mitch Richmond's probably the best guy I play against anywhere. So that after that, they kind of calmed down. Then, of course, it wasn't long till Mitch was kicking butt,
Sure.
And Billy wasn't. And so,
well, Billy had a heart the size of an olive. I mean, and it was such a shame because Billy could have been a great player in the NBA, but he didn't have the drive. He didn't have it. But skill-wise, he had it, but he didn't have all the rest.
No, and I always said, I think, and he kind of admitted that. I think he was one of those guys that had been the child prodigy, 15, 16 years old, the top high school player in the nation, all that sort of thing. And his dad kind of coached him. I think he was a burnout kind of guy. Good guy, as you know. You couldn't. Billy Owens is a nice young man, but just I think as far as really loving the game, to work on his game and get better at that, ship had kind of sailed once he got to the league, and was just good enough to hang on and have a 10, 12-year career. But it's a shame. I think we see that a lot. Some of the sure things aren't, and some of the guys that come out of nowhere turn out to be major stars. Adetokounmpo comes to mind, Jokic, those kind of guys.
All right, let's get back to the Kings. I want to ask this question with only 18 games left. Expectations have changed, as they should. But this West, other than maybe Denver guys, and I'll start with you, Ryan, other than Denver, and I'm also going to put Phoenix in there because you have to, who are the Kings not better than right now in the West? Aren't they as good, if not better, than all the other teams, other than if we put Denver and Phoenix on the side?
Yeah, Grant, that's a great point. Memphis, it depends on what happens with Morant, right? But yeah,
Yes.
they're right there. The Warriors, they scare me, Grant, especially if they get completely healthy. But the Kings are as talented, and they're proving it right now in this second half of the season that they can hang with pretty much everybody in the West right now.
Jerry, what do you think about that?
That's the way I see it. I mean, there's teams there that's concerned me because I know they're not playing to the level they can. The Clippers come to mind, the Warriors come to mind in particular. Of course, with the Warriors, we don't know what's going to happen until Wiggins comes back. I mean, they're not at full strength, and he's a very good player. And, so there's those kind of things with them. And the Clippers just they haven't figured it out yet. And I keep thinking they will, which worries me. But the Kings have figured it out. That's the whole point. They have figured it out, and there's no issues that we see going forward, whereas we see some with those other teams.
don't get me wrong, I would not put the Kings ahead of the Warriors if they were completely healthy. You'd have to be crazy to do that. This is the team that won the championship last year, and really they haven't been together all season. And if they are together all season in a playoff series, I wouldn't want to go up against that, guys. I mean, I think you have to be objective. You have to be realistic about that. That's not a team, to me, that you'd be licking your chops over that, gee, I can't wait to play that team. No, you wouldn't want to play that team. You just wouldn't. They probably would not beat the Warriors in a playoff series if the Warriors were healthy. I wouldn't pick them to beat the Warriors. Who would pick the Kings to beat the Warriors if they're completely healthy? Ryan, would you?
No, I would not pick them to beat the Warriors if they're completely healthy. You know, the Warriors and the Kings are very similar in this sense. They didn't make any huge moves at the trade deadline, and you're seeing all these other teams in the West that made big moves, minus Phoenix, because Durant's fit in pretty well there, that are trying to recalibrate, right? And the Kings, they're just moving forward, and they're gelling now because they kept their core together.
Yeah, those are good points, Ryan. I mean, I think if you're a Warriors fan, you almost need to see Wiggins back at least for 15 games or so, and then the fact to find out if they actually can go on the road and beat somebody. They've just been an atrocious road team. But going back to what you said, or I felt for some time, is that the old Rudy Tomjanovich statement: "Never bet against the heart of a champion." And you know, when they were winning championships and things like that, and I think there's until the champ is knocked out, he's still the champ.
Well, guys, this has been a lot of fun today. Ryan, I'm looking forward to the postgame and halftime with you tomorrow. You'll be doing the pregame show before the Kings and the Knicks. That's going to be a fun game in Sacktown. Jerry, you have yourself a good week, and we'll do it again next Wednesday.
Can't wait. You guys are the best. Thanks.
Thank you, Jerry. Good stuff right there. And Rhino, again, tomorrow, it's going to be a really fun couple of shows, and the place is going to be off the hook tomorrow. So looking forward to that, my friend.
Can't wait, Grant. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, good stuff from Ryan in Sacktown, and don't forget to join us tomorrow. I want to also tell you about New Works Plumbing of Sacramento. Locally owned for over 20 years, New Works has a fix for you. Just go to newworksplumbing.com or sackserviceplumbing.com or call the number on your screen. New Works Plumbing, they've got a fix for you. All right, if you are new, we appreciate having you here with us. Just hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit the like button, and we will greatly appreciate it. Thanks for those of you that donated via the Super Chat today. We really appreciate it. Again, Ryan with the pregame tomorrow. I'll be on with them at halftime and postgame. Hey, thanks very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Bye-bye.